There is a pair of clip-on earrings somewhere in your house tonight, and I want to talk to you about the side of them you have never once looked at. In the middle of the 1980s, the smallest state in America was quietly making around 80% of this country's fashion jewelry. Providence, Rhode Island, and Attleboro just over the Massachusetts line. Something like 25,000 people, 900 companies, turning out close to 1 million pieces every week. Your mother's clip-ons almost certainly came out of those buildings. So did your aunt's. So did mine. And here is what nobody ever told those families. The front of a clip-on earring was designed. The back of it was engineered. The front is fashion, and fashion tells you whatever you want to hear. The back is a machine, and a machine has a birthday. So tonight we are reading 15 backs. Not 15 famous names, 15 clips, screws, plates and stamps, and what each one quietly tells you about the money. Go get the box. Number 15. The screw back that is older than the clip itself. A small threaded post, a little disc you turn with your fingers, and nowhere on it a hinge of any kind. Most people call these clip-ons out of habit. They are not. In 1894, two men named George Tilford and Arthur Bennett patented a screw fitting that let a woman with unpierced ears wear an earring at all. It was slow to catch on, and it did not really take hold until around 1909, when piercing fell out of respectable fashion. From there, it ran the show for close to half a century. So your test tonight? Screw and no hinge anywhere, and you are very likely holding something made before the 1950s. One honest caveat, because replacement screw findings are still sold for repairs. Look at where the finding meets the earring. On original work, the two have aged together, the same warm tone, the same soft wear. A bright new screw on a tired old body means somebody has been in there. Number 14. The paddle clip with grooves cut inside it. Now the shape almost every woman watching will recognize. A wide, flat paddle that folds up against the lobe. The hinged clip was patented in 1934, and by the 40s it had taken over completely. But run your fingernail along the inside of the pad, the part that touches your ear. Some of them are smooth. Some of them have fine parallel grooves, or a rough knurled texture bitten into the metal. Those grooves were not decoration. They were added because the earring was heavy enough to slide off a lobe without them, which tells you something before you have read a single letter. Grooves mean the maker expected weight. Weight means more metal, more stones, and a firm that intended the piece to be worn hard rather than sold once. It narrows it. It does not settle it. Nothing in this video settles it alone. Number 13. The clip with a number stamped on the paddle. Magnifier on the back of that paddle, both faces of it. Some of you are going to find something that stops you. A row of digits. Or two small words, pat-penned. That is a United States patent number, and the Patent Office database is free, public, and searchable by anybody with a telephone. You can type those digits in and get the filing date, the grant date, the inventor's name, and a line drawing of the exact clip sitting in your hand. And pat-penned is even better in its way. It means the piece was made after the application went in and before the patent came out, and that window is very often only 2 or 3 years wide. 2 words, and you have dated an earring to within a presidential term. I have watched collectors walk past this for years. A patent number is the single most checkable thing on a piece of costume jewelry, and it turns up in almost no listing anywhere because digits on a clip do not photograph like sparkle does. Number 12. The clip that has a hinge and a screw together. A paddle clip, hinged like the last one, but with a small screw running through the middle so the tension can be adjusted. Comfortable, clever, wonderful for tender ears, and it gives you a floor you can stand on. That combination fitting was applied for in 1962 and granted in 1965, which means an earring-wearing one is not from the 1940s, whatever the tag on the tray says. This is the entry in tonight's list that protects the buyer rather than the seller. If you shop estate sales and antique malls, this one fitting will save you money the very first weekend you use it. Vintage is not a date. It is a word on a sticker. Number 11. The clip with a year printed right on it. Here is a company that did something almost nobody else in the trade would do. Hollycraft, out of New York, founded by an Armenian immigrant named Joseph Chorbajian under the name Hollywood Jewelry Manufacturing. From about 1950, they stamped the year of the design onto the piece. You will see it as the word copper, spelled COPR, followed by 4 digits: 1950, 1953, 1955. The look is unmistakable once you know it. A crowd of small pastel rhinestones set into a warm, antiqued gold-tone metal. And here is the part that pays. Hollycraft frequently marked the brooch and left the matching earrings unmarked. So an unsigned pair of pastel clips lying next to a dated Hollycraft brooch in the same box is very probably the rest of that set, and sets are worth considerably more than scattered pieces. An object that dates itself takes the expert out of the room. You can see why the practice never spread. Number 10. The little letter C inside a circle. Almost every guide will tell you the same thing. A copyright symbol means the piece is from 1955 or later. That is roughly right, and the reason behind it is real. In March of 1954, the Supreme Court of the United States decided a case called Mazer against Stein and held that a mass-produced useful object could still carry copyright protection on its artistic form. Jewelry makers understood exactly what that meant for their designs, and the little circled C began appearing on the backs of American costume jewelry within a year or two. But here is where the advice goes wrong, and where I watch it cost people money. The presence of that symbol proves your piece is not older than the mid-1950s. The absence of it proves nothing whatsoever. Plenty of firms never bothered marking at all. I have seen a 60s earring confidently dated to the war years on the strength of a missing symbol. A mark can only ever push a date forward. It can never push one back. Number 9. The clip that used to be a pierced post. Turn the earring over and look hard at the place where the clip joins the body of the piece. You are hunting for a scar, a small filled hole, a stub of a post-cut flush, or a patch of solder that is a slightly different color from everything around it. If you find one, somebody converted this earring, and there is nothing shameful in that at all. Ears got pierced late in life, arthritis made screws impossible, women had their favourites altered so they could go on wearing them, which is a rather lovely reason. But the market is not sentimental. A converted earring is an altered object, and altered nearly always means less. Both directions count, by the way. Pierced posts fitted onto old clips, and clips fitted onto old pierced drops. Your test. Compare the metal colour right at the join to the metal colour an inch away. Original work aged as one single thing. A conversion aged as 2. Number 8. The pair that was never a pair. 2 earrings that look identical from 3 feet away and never once belonged to each other. It happens constantly, and very often nobody meant any harm by it. A single gets orphaned, a near match turns up in the next tray, and a pair is quietly born that was never made. 3 tests, all free, all done at your kitchen table. Wait. Put one in each palm, close your eyes, and let your hands tell you. A true pair feels the same. Hands are astonishingly good at this. Spring. Open both clips. Old springs soften, but a genuine pair softened from the same starting point at roughly the same rate. If one snaps shut hard and the other flops open, be suspicious. And wear. Look at the high points on the fronts under a lamp. 2 earrings worn by the same woman for 30 years wear in a mirrored pattern because one faced forward and one faced back. The loss I see most often is somebody paying a pair price for 2 singles that never met. Now let me stop for a breath because we are halfway and there are 2 things I will not skip. The honest one first. I am not a certified appraiser and nothing in this video is an appraisal, an insurance valuation, or legal advice. Any figure I give you is what pieces have reportedly sold for, not a promise about yours. Condition, completeness, and the market on the day decide the price. Before you buy, sell, or insure anything you believe is valuable, have it examined in person and check with a certified appraiser and with the rules in your own state and locality. Older costume jewelry can carry lead, cadmium, or nickel in the plating and the solder, so wash your hands after a long sorting session, keep pieces away from small children, and take any specific health worry to your own doctor rather than to me. And never test anything with acid, a flame, or a hot needle. All 3 damage the object, and none of them are necessary. The second thing is small. If this is useful, subscribe. Not for my sake. Because there is a woman watching tonight with a coffee tin of clip-ons on a closet shelf, and she will never find this unless somebody like you passes it along. 7 to go. Number 7. The stones held by metal instead of glue. Look at the back of the stones themselves. If you can see tiny metal fingers folded over the edges, those are prongs, and a human being closed every one of them. If the back is a solid plate and the stones sit in shallow cups, they were cemented in. Prong set costume jewelry sits in a different tier entirely. It is slower, it costs more, and it was done by firms who expected the earring to outlive the season it was sold in. On a great many pieces, you will find both, prongs on the big stones and cement on the small ones, and that mix is itself a good sign. And here is a bonus. Take that ultraviolet flashlight I am about to send you shopping for and shine it on the back in a dark room. Most modern repair adhesives glow a milky blue-white under ultraviolet. Old jeweler's cement usually does not. One bright halo in an otherwise dark back is a replaced stone. You can photograph a stone. Nobody has ever worked out how to photograph the way it is held. Number 6. The clip on a stone that glows in the dark. Now, the most enjoyable thing in this entire video, and it costs about $10. If you have clip-ons with pale yellow-green glass, a color a little like petroleum jelly, take them into a dark room with an ultraviolet flashlight. Some of them are going to light up a strong, saturated green that seems to be coming from inside the stone. That is uranium glass, sometimes called Vaseline glass. Glassmakers added a small amount of uranium oxide to the batch from the 1830s right through to the 1940s, and it fluoresces like nothing else on Earth. Now the safety, plainly. The radiation is very low and mostly alpha, which will not pass through skin, and these pieces are generally considered safe to own and to wear. What you do not do is eat or drink from uranium glass. That is a genuine distinction, not a fussy one. 2 honest limits. Not every uranium glass fluoresces, and not every glowing glass contains uranium. But a strong green glow from inside the stone is a very good indicator, and these pairs get sold every single day as ordinary green glass beads. Number 5. The black metal sitting behind the bright stones. Pick up any rhinestone clip where the metal underneath the stones is a deep, flat, absolute black. Most people read that as tarnish or as cheap dark alloy and price it accordingly. It is neither. It is Japanning, a hard black lacquer baked onto the base metal so that absolutely nothing competes with the fire of the stones. It is an extra process, it costs money, and it therefore turns up on the better lines rather than the cheap ones. Weiss used it. Schreiner used it. Gustave, Sherman of Montreal, used it beautifully. Your test. Look at the clip itself, not just the front. On genuine japanned work, the black carries over onto the finding too, and where it fails, it chips like a hard shell, showing bright metal underneath. Paint does not chip. Paint rubs and goes chalky at the edges. And a condition warning I will say twice. Never polish a japanned back. That black is the finish. It is not dirt, and once it is gone, it does not come back. Number 4. The nameplate that was soldered on rather than stamped in. A tiny oval or rectangle of metal carrying the name attached to the earring as a separate little piece. Think about why anybody would do that. Stamping a signature into a finished earring risks distorting the piece and cracking the plating, so the careful firms made a plate, engraved it, and soldered it on afterward. The extra step is itself the quality signal, before you have even read the name. Gustave Sherman ran his company out of Montreal from 1947 to around 1981, and he did everything the expensive way. Austrian crystal only, hand-set stones, layer upon layer of rhodium plating. His tag read, "Jewels of Elegance," and I will tell you honestly, Sherman clips are still throwing light today when far more famous pieces of the same age have gone flat and dead. And check whether that plate is soldered or glued. A glued nameplate on a piece claiming to be 70 years old is a warning, not a signature. Number 3. The clip out of Providence that never got a name at all. Now back to where we started tonight, because this is the one I most want you to carry out of here. Most American costume earrings were not made by the company on the label. They were made by contract shops in Providence and Attleboro and shipped out under whatever name had ordered them. Sarah Coventry, which sat in nearly every jewelry box in this country, never manufactured its own jewelry at all. The designs went out, and the work was done in Rhode Island and New Hampshire, which means a signed clip and an unsigned clip could come off the same bench on the same afternoon out of the same pair of hands. So the phrase, "no name, no value," is not appraisal, It is a filing system. Names are simply the only thing a catalogue knows how to sort by, so judge the object instead. Prongs or cement, soldered plate or stamp, grooves or plain pad, the weight in your palm, how deep the plating still is at the corners where it rubbed. Those 5 things describe the bench that built it, and the bench is what you are actually buying. Number 2. The clip stamped 1/20th 12K GF. Almost nobody knows what those little marks mean, and they are on more American earrings than you would believe. 1/20 12K GF, or 10K GF, or the words rolled gold plate. That is gold-filled, and it is not plating. It is a sheet of genuine carat gold, mechanically bonded to a base metal core, and by law, the gold layer has to be at least 1/20th of the total weight of the piece. That is on the order of 100 times the gold you get in ordinary electroplate, which is why gold-filled does not flake. It wears through, slowly, over decades, and a great many 1940s and 50s American clip-ons are still sitting there with their gold entirely intact. Now the honest half. Gold-filled is not solid gold, refiners pay very little for it, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. But a heavy, gold-filled pair from a good maker is nearly always worth more as jewellery than as metal, and it gets swept into the costume tray every single day. The loss I see most often: a box of what the family called gold tone clips, where 3 of the pairs were carrying real gold on the surface the whole time. And now, number 1. Number 1. The oval plate that reads Cur, Dior, and a year. Christian Dior died in October of 1957, and the German firm that made the great bulk of the house's costume jewellery, Henkel and Gross of Pforzheim, began from about that moment, putting the year of manufacture directly onto the signature plaque. So you get a small oval cartouche reading Cur Dior, a copyright symbol, and 4 digits, sometimes the word Germany with it. Sometimes made in Germany for Christian Dior, and every so often it turns up on a pair of clip-on earrings that somebody's husband brought home from a department store counter in 1960. Sit with what that is for a moment. A pair of earrings in an ordinary American jewelry box that tells you its own birth year without you having to ask a single human being for permission. I will keep the money honest, as always. The late 50s and early 60s Henkel and Gross work is far scarcer than the large runs of the 70s and 80s, and sign-dated pairs have reportedly sold from the low hundreds upward, depending entirely on the design and the condition. That is a range, not a promise, and the loss I see most often on this one genuinely hurts. Sold in a box lot as gold-tone clip earrings because nobody turned it far enough over to read the little plate. So here is what I would like you to do this week, and it will take you one evening. Sit somewhere with a strong lamp, get the cheap magnifier, and this time get the ultraviolet flashlight too, because it is the one tool nobody in your family owns. Then go through the box back first, and only back first. Read every paddle for digits. Feel inside every pad for grooves. Check every join for a conversion scar. Look at the back of the stones and decide, prongs or cement. Put the pairs in your palms and let your hands vote. Then take the whole tray into a dark room and turn out the light and see what glows. Anything you cannot explain goes into a separate dish, and that dish is what you take to a certified appraiser in person before you buy, sell, or insure anything at all. Now, 2 things in the comments, because I do read them. The first, go and find the tightest clip-on in your house. The pair that still pinches after 50 years. The ones you loved and could only ever wear for an hour. Tell me what is written on the back of that one, and tell me who it belonged to. I would like to know. And the second, where I am going to disagree with my own trade and where I expect an argument. Everybody teaches that the signature makes the piece. I think the fitting is the more honest witness, and I will tell you exactly why. A signature can be forged in an afternoon with a stamp and a hammer. A period-correct finding, aged to match the body it sits on, is a great deal of trouble for very little money. The name is what the market wants. The back is what the object actually did. Serious collectors will tell me I have that precisely backwards, that provenance is the whole business and the rest is romance. Tell me where you land. I would rather be argued with than agreed with, because none of the 15 things we looked at tonight are secrets. Nobody hid them. They simply never got written down anywhere, because you cannot patent turning an earring over, you cannot sell it again next Christmas, and a clip has never once been photographed for the front of a catalogue. Somebody stood at a bench in Providence and cut those grooves so the earring would not fall off your mother's ear. That is a kindness done by a stranger 70 years ago on the side of the object nobody looks at. Go and look at it, and I will see you in the next one.